Good morning, friends. Today, our topic is EIA, nothing but Environmental Impact Assessment. What that it means? If any developmental project is being uptaken by any world country, then the country has to check what type of impact is there on the environment because of that developmental project. This is a wonderful concept. This has become a very important concept in the entire world countries because the development is an integral part of the environmental management. The environmental conservation, protection, and sustainable development have become the hallmark for the unprecedented growth in the age of rapid industrialization as well as urbanization throughout the world. Therefore, EIA has taken a very great position in the developmental activities all over the world, and India is not an exemption. Therefore, let us see the importance of EIA and what type of development that took place in India regarding EIA. The UNDP, the United Nations Environmental Programme, has defined the environmental impact assessment as the systematic examination of unintended consequences of a development project or a program with a view to reduce or mitigate negative impacts and maximize the positive ones. This is a very important definition given by UNDP. The environmental impact assessment is simply a process. What is one? Is a process where it will be assessing the development taken place in any society with relation to socio-economic, with relation to socio-economic, with relation to socio-economic, cultural, cultural, and even the health impacts. Meaning, if a developmental project is taken place in any one locality, then that developmental project will be having definitely an impact on the socio-economic status of the people living there, the culture of that particular region, even the health regarding that particular region, the health of the people of that region. Taking into consideration all these things, whether we need to introduce that developmental project or not, or let there be some other alternatives, or shall there be any modification in the developmental project. Earlier, before the introduction of EIA, where there was no such assessment was done, it was only the political decision, never that the people will be, the politicians will be considering the impact of that developmental project on socio-economic conditions of the people, the cultural aspects of the region, and even the health hazards that are related to that particular area. This particular concept of EIA means what? Giving more and more importance to the environment. It took place only in the year 76-77. EIA has taken place in the year 1976-77 in India. Way back, much earlier to this time period, there was this concept in the world countries. Let us see where this EIA has taken birth for the first time and how it entered or it made a way into India. Let us see all these things in the next slide. The origin of EIA has taken place in USA in the year 1969 itself. There was a enactment of The National Environmental Policy Act, which is popularly called as NEPA Act, NEPA, is a very important act which gave birth for the environmental impact assessment. In fact, this is the concept took birth in the USA and made way into India during 1976-77 under the Department of Science and Technology, where for the first time for the development of river valleys, for the construction of the river valleys for the first time in India, the EIA was introduced. And all the EIA is being guided by the Indian Environmental Protection Act 1986. This is very important. Which law is guiding, or which is the law which is giving power to EIA? It is the Environmental Protection Act, EPA. Environmental Protection Act 1986 is the one which gives certain tooth for the EIA in India. The environmental impact assessment is based on three core values. What are the three core values on which the environmental impact assessment is? If this is the one, these are the three legs for the environmental impact assessment. What are the three important values or the principles where EIA stands on? EIA stands on the three important principles, like the first one is called as integrity, the next one utility, the third one sustainability. Integrity means what? The EIA processes should be fair, objective, unbiased, and balanced. See, these are the concept of integrity, where there should not be any bias towards any particular area or to the project. It should be analyzed very fairly and should be objective in nature, and there should be balanced approach. The next very important principle on which the environmental impact assessment is standing on is called as utility. What the utility means? The EIA process should provide balanced, credible information for decision making. Whatever the inputs that are required for the taking of the decision, all the credible information should be provided, so that based upon the information provided, the way a great decision can be taken up. The third one is called as sustainability. What the meaning of sustainability? Where the developmental project that is being implemented should safeguard the environment of that region. This is called as the sustainability. These are the three very important core principles on which EIA depends upon. This can be a PT exam question, like which of the following areas? See the question. The question can be asked like this: which of the following which of the following are the important core principles on which the EIA is valued on? They will be giving A, B, C, D like this, or they will be giving as 1, 2, 3, 4. They will be giving integrity, then utility, then they will be giving sustainability, then they will be giving some other thing, maybe consistency or something like this. Then they'll be asking A as 1, 2 and 3, B 1 and 2 only, C 3 and 2 only, and D 1, 2, 3, 4. This type of questions can be asked. These are the very important principles on which EIA stands. One is called as integrity, then utility and sustainability. Again, let us see integrity. What is the integrity? There should be fair, unbiased process should be uptaken here in analyzing the effect of developmental project on the environment. Then utility talks about providing all the inputs for taking a wise decision. Then the third one, sustainability. What this sustainability talks about? It talks about the protection of the environment because of that developmental project. What type of protection or safeguard needs to be given to that particular region? This is what the sustainability. All the three are very important for EIA. What are the aims and objectives of environmental impact assessment? The first and very important one is to declare a national policy to encourage productive and the enjoyable harmony between man and the environment. Then the second one to promote effort to prevent damage to the environment, to increase understanding of ecological system and natural resources important to the nation. And the last one is to establish a council of environmental quality. These are the four very important objectives as well as the main aims of EIA. The next question arises after seeing the aims and objectives. Do we need EIA? Do we need EIA? This is a $1,000,000 question. Where the concept is the brainchild of USA, but it has taken away into India. But is the Indians require this EIA? Yes, we do require. Why we do require? Because in the modern times, the anthropogenic activities have created immense pressure on the natural environment. This pressure has degraded the environment in an unprecedented way. Therefore, the environmental degradation at this pace, if continues, will bring humanity on the brink of extinction. Therefore, EIA is a very important tool for the very existence of the human. This is the importance of EIA. Let us see the EIA processes in India. Before going to see the EIA processes in India, let us talk something regarding history, how the EIA has entered into India and changed, and changed means what? How it got amended. Initially it was under which department and then it was shifted to which ministry. Now the first one, way back in the year 1976 77, it was Planning Commission asked the Department of Science and Technology, it's called as DST. At that point of it was Department of Science and Technology. The Planning Commission has asked the DST to examine the river valley projects from the environmental angle. Till 1994, see the benchmarks I am giving, all the important one is 1976-77. Till that point of time, DST was the nodal agency. Then in 1994, a greater development took place. Till 1994, the environmental clearance, which is popularly called as EC. What is this environmental clearance? Means what? The permission should be given by the environmental permission. Means what? When any developmental project needs to be established there, it has to be given the environmental clearance. Initially, the environmental clearance was given by DST till 1994, but after 1994, what happened? This environmental clearance from the central government, which was the administrative division, which was the administrative action, which was lacking legislative action. Legislative action means what? There is no discussion in the House of Parliament. Until 1994, it was the action of simply the executive, but for the first time, right from 1994 on Jan 24th, the Union Ministry of Environment and Forest, under the Forest Protection Act or Environmental Protection Act, not the Forest Protection Act, is the Environmental Protection Act 1986, promulgated an notification making environmental clearance mandatory for the expansion or the modernization or the establishment of any developmental activity under Schedule 1 of notification. Under Schedule 1 of the notification. Means what? Initially it was in the year 1976-77 where the DST was given the authority to give the environmental clearance. Till that point of time, it was an action of only executive where there was no legislation that was brought here. Right from 1994, the legislative status was being given for EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment. And it was brought under the Ministry of Environment and Forest on January 24th, 1994 under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. What are the processes that are involved in the EIA processes? Earlier, there are number of such procedures, so many procedures are there, but in the year 2006, there is an amendment made to this EIA Act. Because of this one, the procedures were reduced to just 4 steps. Earlier there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 steps were there, which was a very cumbersome and the tedious process. But now, after 2006 amendment, where there were just 4 steps. But let us see the earlier procedure and compare with the present day procedure, because the earlier procedure is the one which forms the base for the present day structure, present day processes. The first one is called as screening. The second one is called as scoping. The third one is called as the data collection. Fourth, the impact analysis. Fifth, mitigation. Sixth, public hearing. Seventh one, environmental management plan, which is popularly called as EMP. Environmental management plan. Then decision making. The last one is called as monitoring the clearance condition. These are the steps that were involved right from 1976 till 2006. After 2006, these steps are being clubbed under just 4 steps. What are the 4 steps we'll be seeing, but let us see what are the steps that are involved in the earlier processes. Why we need to read this earlier process? Yes, they are very important. In fact, these processes are not has been not shared out. All the processes are being included within these 4 processes. Let us see the first one. It's called as screening. All the EIA processes are cyclical and interactions between the various steps. The first step is called as screening. What the screening means? The project plan is screened for, say, scale of investment, location and type of development. And if the project needs statutory clearance, then the government will be giving that clearance. This is the first stage in the EIA. What it determines? It determines whether the project requires the assessment or not. Where the screening criteria is determined by scale of investment, how much of investment that particular development project requires, then the type of development, what type of developmental project, whether it is a atomic power plant or the river project, river valley development project, or maybe some of the neutrino project. It depends upon the type of development. Then where it is located, whether it is located in the ecologically sensitive zone or whether it is located on the very stable land of that locality. These are the categories where the screening will be done. After this one, where the projects are being categorized into 3 groups, one is called as the category A. What is category A? Category A is the one which typically requires environmental assessment report. This is a large scale project where it may leads. This particular project will definitely leads. It has given as it may leads. In fact, every chance is there for the changes in the land use of that region, as well as the changes in the social, physical and the biological environment of the region. The next category is category B. The difference between the category A and category B is the scale of that project, whether the project is it's a large project or the smaller project. If this is a large project, which will be categorized as A project. If it is a medium sized project, which will be categorized as category B. This is the only difference between the category A and category B earlier. But after 2006, there were number of subdivisions brought in the category B, and they have removed the other one called as the C category. Let us see the next C category. The category C is this project that typically do not require, it doesn't require the environmental assessment. Therefore, these projects are unlikely to have adverse environmental impacts. These are the three different types of categories that are mentioned in the screening. The next is the scoping. Scoping is nothing but what is the scope of the project, the project's potential impact on the locality, socio-economic impacts, and what type of monitoring needs to be developed there for that project, and what type of possible mitigations needs to be developed. These are all things that comes under the scoping. This stage identify the key issues and impacts that should be further investigated. Means what? This is what I have explained. It talks about the impacts, what type of impacts will be there. For that impacts, what should be the mitigation, what should be the mitigation strategies, and what should be the scale of monitoring, whether the monitoring is required on a continuous basis or not. This been decided here in this one. These are divided into two types. One is called as quantificable impacts and another one is called as non-quantifiable impacts. What are the quantificable impacts? The quantificable impacts are nothing but it depends upon the magnitude of the problem, the prevalence of the problem there, the frequency and even the duration of the project. Whereas the non-quantifiable impacts, they are aesthetic or recreational values. The next one is the baseline data. It is simply the environmental status of the study area. What this means, it is simply the environmental status of study area. What type of environmental conditions are prevalent in that particular area where the site is being selected for the developmental activity. This is the environmental status of the study area. What that is being given here under this one. Come on, let us see this one. The impact prediction is a way of mapping the environmental consequences on the significant aspect of the project and its alternatives. Here we will be seeing the other modes of alternatives, whether we can develop other alternatives, because this particular project may have adverse impacts on the geography of that region. Therefore, we need to go for finding some other alternatives. The impacts that are assessed here are the air quality, noise. What are the other things? Now see here, the air quality is it in the ambient level or the ground level concentration is more? Then what type of effect will be there on the soil, what type of effect will be there on the vegetation, and finally what type of effect will be there on the human health. When it comes to the noise, the changes in the ambient value due to the noise generated by a developmental project may be because of movement of the vehicles or some other the industrial equipment, and that noise impact on the fauna that is present there and even the health on the people they are living there. These are some of the factors where we need to consider and we need to check. Apart from air and noise, what are the other factors? Let us see the other factors. The other things like water, whether the water get degrades because of any developmental project, whether the land use will get changed. Means what do you mean by land use changes? What do you mean by the land use changes? Suppose this is a piece of land till this point of time this particular land is used for agriculture. Now because of development of any one developmental project in the nearby locality, where more and more migration takes place in that region, when more and more migration takes place in this region, that particular movement of the people will be having an impact on this piece of land. Till this point of time this was an agricultural land, but now the use of this land will get changed right from agriculture to maybe industrial purposes, or maybe the commercial shopping complex purposes. Some other one means what, the use of the land got changed. This is called as the land use changes. What type of impacts will be there on the land? This is one impact. Then biological impact and socio-economic impact. Let us see each and everything. Water, the first one. What type of changes that can take place in the quality of the water? It changes in the quality, the sediment transportation, and even the salinity of the water will change. Now on the land, what type of changes can be there on the land? Now the first and foremost one is called as the land use. The land use patterns will get changed. Not only the land use patterns will change, the drainage pattern also changes. What do you mean by the drainage pattern? Just imagine the any urban locality, maybe the city of Bangalore. Whenever you are seeing the Bangalore is not the same as 1990 and 2020. Whenever you are seeing the Bangalore in 1920 and 1990, where the number of houses are less, and therefore the rainwater that used to move to all the tanks that are located in and around the city, but because of the haphazard growth of the urban locality, and because of the cropping up of the in residential complexes, due to this one, where the water is not properly drained, where there is no way for the water to drain in the tanks and get logged on the roads. Therefore many times, even not just the city of Bangalore, this is a very common problem in almost all cities of the world. The best example and the current related development is the city of Jakarta. Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia, frequently is being flooded. Though the whenever you are seeing the population, what is the population of Indonesia? Indonesia ranks fourth in the world. The Indonesian country ranks fourth in the population of the world, and Jakarta is a highly populated country in the world. Whenever the rain takes place, all the streets of the Jakarta will be in a submerged condition. It will be creating a very great problem for the commuters there. Therefore, in the year 2019, the president of the Jakarta has taken a decision to shift the capital city from Jakarta to Kalimantan. 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 Suppose if you are seeing the map of Indonesia, if this is Indonesia, to the north of Indonesia you can find a very large island called as Borneo. This is called as Borneo Island. The southern side of Borneo, entire this region belongs to Indonesia, and now they want to construct the capital city here in the eastern part of Borneo, where they have not yet named the city, but the construction one is already started. Now they want to shift the capital city from the Sumatran island, from here to this area. This is the current related one. Then the next one, biological. What are the other biological changes that takes place? The biological changes like deforestation, shrinkage of the animal habitation. Whenever the habitat, what is the habitat? The living place of the animal. Whenever the living place of the animal is being destroyed, the animal don't have any other choice but to enter into the human habitation or to extinct. Then the next one, impact on flora and fauna. Due to the developmental project, where the it will be leading to pollution. Due to that pollution, it will be having an adverse impact on both the floods and the plant life and the animal life. Then impact on rare and endangered species endemic to that particular region. These are all the biological impacts, and even the breeding capacity and the nesting grounds of the region. Whenever you are talking about the nesting grounds, the best example is the Rushikul region. Rushikulya region of the coast of Odisha, where the olive ridley turtles will be coming for the nesting purposes. Whenever any such developmental work takes place, then the species won't be coming there, therefore the population of that species will go extinct. And this is what the impact of that project on the life on the earth. Then the socio-economic impacts, not just for the flora and fauna, even for the humans, where the socio and the economic conditions will be affected. Like the impact on local communities, including the demographic changes will take place, the impact of economic status of the people, the human health of the people, and even the traffic will be increased. These are all the some of the impacts that takes place due to the developmental projects in any one locality. Therefore all these impacts needs to be assessed and the data needs to be given on a proper line so that the decision can be taken in a on a perfect line. The next one is the assessment of the alternatives, means what, whether any other alternative needs to be considered or not, and any mitigation measures needs to be taken or not. And finally the report needs to be prepared. What the report? Environmental impact assessment report needs to be prepared. For this one, the impact prediction needs to be made. What do you mean by impact prediction? What are the pros and cons? What are the positives and negative impacts which can be reversible or irreversible, or if the impact may be temporary or permanent? All this needs to be assessed. One is either it is having the positive or negative impact, whether it will be reversible or irreversible. The next one, whether it is permanent or temporary. The changes that takes place, whether they are permanent or temporary, they needs to be predicted before the introduction of the project in that locality. The next step is the mitigation measures and EIA report. The EIA report should include the actions and steps for preventing, minimizing, or bypassing the impacts, or else the levels of compensation for the portable environmental damage or loss. All these things needs to be taken care. Means what? The mitigation measures needs to be considered, and even a solid report needs to be prepared, where that report should be based on the environmental management plan needs to be prepared. This environmental management plan is critical for monitoring and clearing conditions. What is this clearing condition? Is called as environmental clearing conditions. Once the EIA report is prepared, now the administrator has to take the decision by selecting or by seeing different scenarios, like with the same project or without the project, or with the alternatives, that is nothing but the modifications that were changed in the project, and the uncertainties that should also be reflected in the environmental project. Means what? Let me explain in the form of a graph. Suppose if at all I am taking time on the x-axis and the environment on the y-axis. This is the graph with the x and y axis. I have taken time on the x axis and environmental condition on the y axis. Now suppose if the project is not implemented, no developmental project is implemented, means what? The environmental is in a same condition, there is no change in the environment, there is no degradation of the environment, because as there is no developmental project that has introduced here, the environmental condition is one and the same. Because of introduction, suppose we have introduced the development project at this time period, maybe 2000, this is the 2000. Because of introduction of developmental project in the year 2000, now the environmental till this point of time it was too good. With the implementation of this developmental project, maybe the atomic power plant, now what happened? what happens? You can find the degradation of environment. It has to be up to here, means what? It is without project. It is without project. If the project is implemented, then the degradation of the environment has taken place. This is with project. Now, how the EIA, see this one? How the EIA will comes to the rescue. As the developmental project has to be established there, there is no question of weeding out the development, as the development is inevitable. Therefore, we need to degrade the environment, means what? We need to establish the plant or establish that particular developmental project with minimum degradation on the environment. Means what? Now the level of degradation is only up to here. If the EIA, this is with EIA project with EIA, it is the project without EIA. If there is no project at all, environment will be perfectly all right. But if the project is been implemented, then the degradation takes place up to here. Therefore, how much of area we have saved, how much of environment we have saved, this much of the dotted line. See the dotted picture, this is the dotted area where we have saved this environment. If this project is implemented without EIA, entire this area, means what? Entire this damage would have taken place. But with the help of EIA, now the degradation is at minimum level. This is what the graphical representation of the EIA. After this one, we need to see the public hearing. Here again, we need to pay very great attention regarding the public hearing. What is public hearing? Now comes the role of DM or collector. What is this public hearing? Suppose this is the area. In this locality, now the government wants to establish the plant here. Maybe neutrino factory or neutrino research institution, or maybe any other atomic power plant, or maybe the satellite launching center. Any such developmental project is established here. Now, because of the establishment of such a developmental project here, it will be having definitely impact in all the surrounding areas. Therefore, these people either needs to be displaced, or the mitigation activities needs to be introduced here, or some other activities needs to be introduced here in this area. For this one, the opinion of the people needs to be taken, where it is called as the public hearing. It's called as public hearing. Now, what the district collector has to do, he has to notify the details about the project in the local newspaper, in the vernacular language, also in one of the national newspaper. After mentioning or after publicizing the importance of the project, where the project is going to be established, what type of impacts will be there, the people needs to be made aware, where the people needs to be educated in this area. Say for example, in this locality, the uranium mining center is going to be established. Since the availability of the uranium is there in that locality, where the people needs to be brought the awareness. Now, after bringing the awareness to the people among the people, now there will be some meeting. Means what? All the local peoples who are present in that locality needs to be invited on one particular designated time and date. The people needs to be invited, and in the capacity of the DM or the collector, this guy has to explain the positives and the negatives of this one. Now, if there is any NGO If there is any non-governmental organization that is working there in that locality, that needs to be invited by the collector, and entire this process needs to be videographed. This is a very important condition. Videographed. And who are the ex officio members who has to attend this public hearing? It is CP, CB and SPCB. What do you mean by CPCB and SPCB? Is nothing but Central Pollution Control Board members and the State Pollution Control Board members. As a mandatory condition, these personalities should be involved in the public hearing. Then only this particular meeting is said to be conducted. This is what the public hearing. Now, after the public hearing, what happens? The decision needs to be taken. What type of decision? The decision can be either the project needs to be implemented or it's not implemented. If there is environmental clearance, definitely the project will be implemented. If there is no consensus among the people, where the people started agitating, where the people said no to the project, then the project will not be implemented. When the project is not implemented, again it has to be referred to redesigning. It has to be redesigned, and again the process needs to be followed and resubmitted. It has to be resubmitted. Sorry for the writing. See, it's not the pen, the marker or the pencil is not here. Therefore, I'm unable to write this one very clearly. Handwriting, please don't consider the handwriting. Yes, it has to be redesigned and resubmitted. Then the last one is called as the monitoring the clearance conditions. Monitoring should be done during constructions, during construction, and even post construction also. The monitoring should be done during, means what, both the time during the construction, also post constructions, which is called as the operative phase. This ensures that the commitments made are complied, and if the prediction made in the EIA report are correct or not. These are all the very important steps that are involved in the EIA process. See the same explanation which is being given in a form of a chart. Now the first one is called as proposal. First one is called as the proposal identification. Then screening will be done. After screening, what is screening? Whether the EIA is required or not. Now, if the EIA is required, all the following steps takes place. If the EIA is not required, there is no question of discussion at all. Then whenever the EIA required, for this one, scoping. What is scoping? Mitigation techniques, then alternatives needs to be found. Then after this one, the impact analysis. What type of impact will be there, we need to analyze. After collecting this one, all the mitigation and the impact management data collection, all the collection is be taken, and the EIA report is be developed. Once the EIA report is been prepared, now that EIA report needs to be reviewed by the public. Public involvement, nothing but the opinion of the public, where the EIA report needs to be reviewed. And finally, after the revision, here itself you come across the district magistrate, the CPCB, then publication on the newspaper. All these things are will come here. Then after having all these things, then we need to take the decision. Now the decision is taken. The decision taking means what? The decision can be of two types, whether it can be approved or it cannot, it won't be approved. If it gets approved, then the implementation takes place, the implementation follows. If it is not approved, again the project needs to be redesigned and again resubmitted. These are the steps involved in the process of EIA. It's a wonderful diagram which is being given very clearly. The entire explanation, whatever the explanation we have given all right from the beginning, is being given in one chart. This chart is important. See, right, entire right from this time period till this time period, the public involvement is there. Right from scoping till the review where the public is involved. This is the graphical representation of EIA process. This very EIA, which was given the legislative status right from the year 1994, got amended in the year 2006. This 2006 amendment, EIA amendment, is very very important. Why? Because it has decentralized the entire process of EIA. Earlier, it was only under the control of the central government, where the central government will be taking the decision to whether to give the permission for the developmental project or not. Now, the decentralization has taken place only in the year 2006. What is this decentralization? Giving more teeth to the state governments. The environmental clearance projects are categorized into two projects. Into the projects like are categories like category A and category B. The category A projects require mandatory environmental clearance. Normally, this category A projects are the huge projects. They are under the control of the center. They are the national project managed by the center. Whereas the category B was given under the state control. The category B projects was given under the state control, and further this category B is divided into B1 and B2 projects. These B1 projects needs to be assessed, and EIA is very much required for these B1 projects, whereas B2 projects, they don't require EIA. They don't require the EIA, means what? Environmental impact assessment is not required for them, as they are the small projects. Therefore, there is no question of EIA involved here in the B2 projects, but B1 projects are as a mandatory condition where the EIA has to be given for this one. Means what? Environmental clearance needs to be given. Again, we need to follow all the procedures: screening, scoping, public hearing, appraisal. All the processes that are involved earlier are being clubbed under just four headings. The four headings are called as screening, scoping, public hearing, and appraisal. These are the four levels where the EIA is being assessed, and environmental clearance will be given. See, the institutions that are involved is called as state level environmental impact assessment authority. Earlier it is simply called as Environmental Impact Assessment Authority. Now at a state level, where this is called as the State Environmental Impact Assessment Authority. The next one is called as the State Level Expert Appraisal Committee. This appraisal committee is very much involved here in the public hearing, where this one is a very important body. It will be appraising, it will be going for the clearing and eliminating all the doubts that are there in the local people, and therefore it is a very active body which will be bringing the clearance certificate from the local communities, and which makes the work of state level environmental impact assessment very easy. This is the structure right now after 2006. Finally, coming to the environmental benefits and flaws. What are the flaws that are present here in the CIA, and what are the benefits? It's been given in the form of a table here. Benefits on one side, flaws on the other side. It provides systematic method of impact assessment. Definitely, it is giving a very great and systematic method of assessment, but it is a time consuming. How much of time is being consumed by this entire process? Let us see the time that is involved here in this process. Scoping requires 60 days. This is for scoping. Finding the mitigation techniques, seeing the other alternatives, all these things. A minimum of 16 days is required for this one. Whereas for the public hearing, it requires 45 days. 45 days for public hearing. Public hearing. And finally, for the appraisal and the environmental clearance, EC granting, total of 105 days are required. For EC granting and appraisal, and for appraisal, total of 105. Total comes to 210 days. Means what? In order to get permission or clearance from the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, a minimum of 210 days is required for any developmental project. Almost all more than half a year. Therefore, it's a highly time consuming process. This is a very important and a very great flaw that is present here in the EIA. Entire EIA, what is the biggest flaw here is a time consuming process. Time is simply wasted here. Then the next is the it estimates the cost benefit trade off. Yes, it's a very great trade off between the cost and benefit, how much you are investing and how much you are getting benefited. It's a very great cost benefit trade off, but the projects are costly. Means what? The EIA itself involves so much of cost for the exchequer. Therefore, again, it's unnecessarily cost according to some of the people. Then next one is called as the facilities for the public participation. Yes, the public is being asked whether the particular project is required in that locality or not. The public are being given the greater share in that one. But this public participation is there for the namesake. Once the government decides to introduce any such project there, though the public are agitating, though the public is agitating in that locality, their views will be suppressed somehow or the other how. But be very careful, don't write the same language in the exam, like the public views will be suppressed. You should be very logical in giving the statement, like you should be highly diplomatic in writing the answer. Since I'm having the liberty to explain all very openly, I'm explaining to you. Say that the public hearing is there in the EIA procedure, but the public hearing many times is being sidelined. This is what the term you need to use the things. Okay, this is the one. The next one is it provides the effective mechanism for the coordination, environmental integration, the negotiation, feedback mechanism, all they are there. But all they are there at the same time, when the government feels like that particular project is very important, all these things never comes as a hurdle for the government. The next one is called as the top level decision making body. Though it's a top level decision making body, it too focus to scientific analysis sometimes, then achieves a balance between the impact and the development and the environmental concern. Is a wonderful point, it's an important point, it's a balance between the developmental and the environmental concern. See, this is the main motto for EIA, where it has to balance both the things. As the United Nations Environmental Organization feel like there is a tug of war between E versus E, also D versus D. What is this E versus E and D versus D? Environment versus economy, destruction versus development. More the destruction, more the development, more the environmental loss, more the economic development. Therefore, it's a trade-off between the development on one hand and the environment on the other hand. This is a very important and valid point for the EIA. At the same time, it has a counter flaw, like saying that it has a compliance monitoring after EIA is seldom carried out. Means what? Many times the EIA is carried out for the namesake. What is the best example? The best example is Indian Neutrino Project. Indian Neutrino Project, which took place in Tamil Nadu, where the EIA was conducted on the name for the namesake. This is a very important example for the EIA, where the EIA was being defeated in letter and spirit. But again, be very careful in writing the examples in the exam, right? This is all about EIA. In fact, EIA is the important concept for the mains part. Many times the question will be asked in the mains, but even now in the recent past they are likely to ask questions even in the preliminary part. Therefore, it is very important to discuss in the preliminary angle as well as the mains angle. I have given a complete picture of the EIA with respect to preliminary part of the exam as well as the mains part of the exam. All the best for your exam. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.